This is a special report from About Space Today.
Welcome to Special Report. I'm David Denault. If you've listened regularly to About Space Today, you know we have followed the UAP phenomena, or commonly called UFOs, for some time, including the hearings before Congress and NASA's Special Select Committee. Recently, About Space has found that two ministers of defense from two different countries claim of alien existence. Next, as America and the world is listening to Special Report on About Space Today. Hey, it's the good old summertime, and time to think about a Florida beach vacation. Well, D&D Cruise and Tours is the official travel agent for About Space Today, and we want to invite you to come and see the Space Coast this summer. Our hotels are just steps away to our beautiful sun-bleached beaches and the azure waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And we're just minutes from the cruise port, with many hotels offering free or reduced parking. And maybe you'll want to come and see and visit the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. And maybe just relax to the sound of the waves crashing along our shorelines. Call D&D Cruise and Tours at 877-747-8631 and come and see the Space Coast. Welcome back. Our research stumbled across a very unique phrase, quote, a Galactic Federation of Aliens, end quote. What? Yes, that was my reaction until I listened to the former Canadian Minister of National Defense and longtime member of Canadian Parliament, the Honourable Paul Hellyer, discuss the alleged Galactic Federation of Aliens that was also discussed publicly recently by former head of Israel's military space program, Hayam Eshad, in an interview on Hannibal TV. Hellyer shares what he knows about the Galactic Federation.
Well, I only know about the Galactic Federation, but they are concerned about what's going on in the world, and they have been working through individuals. They'll pick out a few individuals and visit them or talk to them telepathically or send information to them by channeling. I have a very close friend who was writing a second book right now with channeling from a species called the Basidas. Very few people have heard of it. They have a deal that they won't interfere, but I think that there's also a loophole if things get bad enough that they would make exceptions, but we can't count on them. I mean, maybe we can count on them, but we shouldn't count on them because they say, you clean up your act. You're in charge, it's your planet, and if it comes to a dead end, it will be because you let it or made it a dead end. Because it wasn't necessary and you had everything going. It's one of the best planets in the whole universe, and everybody covets the fact that it's so good, and you have been destroying it. And this is something that we've tried to let you know by various ways over a long period. The individual communications always say, look, there are things you've got to do. Stop your clear cutting, stop your fracking, stop using fossil fuels, because there are better ways.
Better ways? And what might that entail? Well, one person who's been very open about UFOs for a number of years is the former director of the UK Ministry of Defence's UFO office, Nick Pope. And Pope says the alleged Galactic Federation of Aliens that was also publicly and recently discussed by former head of Israel's space program, Hayam Eshad, who is also an award-winning professor and retired Israeli general. Nick Pope on the Galactic Federation of Aliens.
Well, Hayam Eshad is who he says he is, and he did what he said he did. I guess my big question is, is he speaking about matters on which he has direct personal knowledge and experience from within government and from within the Israeli space program? Or is he simply citing his beliefs based on reading the literature or based on things that he's been told by a third party? And of course, it's interesting, you mentioned Paul Hellyer. It's the same question. Now, Paul Hellyer is I think, pretty clear on this. He said that when he was Defense Minister of Canada, and indeed, I believe, Deputy Prime Minister at a time, this did not cross his desk, and it's only subsequently that he's talked to some of his military colleagues, some of whom are in the US, who've confirmed the reality of this to him. And my question is, with Haim Eshed, again, it's the same question. Well, is this what you know or what you think? And we don't know the answer yet when it comes to Haim Eshed. But look, all of this, none of this can be looked at in isolation. It's all part of a big jigsaw puzzle that we're slowly piecing together. If any of these things happened in isolation, you'd probably think, well, the person's gone crazy. We were talking earlier about Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard and his claims about Oumuamua. But don't look at that in isolation. Look at that along with Paul Hellyer's claims. Look at it along with Haim Eshed's claims. I mean, Galactic Federation sounds like something straight out of Star Trek. You know, maybe it's real. And what happened? A former CIA director, John Brennan, gave an interview. And he started off talking about weather phenomenon. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's going to play this very safe. He'd been asked about the US Navy videos. And then suddenly he starts talking about, well, you know, some people think it might be attributable to something which is a different form of life. And so when these sorts of people, whether it's a former CIA director, whether it's a professor at Harvard, whether it's a Canadian defense minister, whether it's the co-founder of Israel's space program, when those sorts of people at that sort of level, with those sorts of backgrounds, start saying this, I think the world should be sitting up and paying more attention. And the good news is that I think they are. I think the landscape has changed over the last 3 years, and it's continuing to change. And all of these people, whether it's Haim Eshed, John Brennan, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Avi Loeb, Paul Hellyer, all of these people are playing a part in changing the world. And it will change if, as I often like to say, the believers don't have to prove a whole bunch of these cases. They only need to prove one of them. The skeptics need to be right every single day. The believers only need to be right once. And if they are, we're going to have to rethink and redo everything. Politics, science, religion, technology, economics, the military, philosophies, everything will be altered by the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe. And it seems to me every time one of these stories breaks, we're getting closer and closer, maybe, to that moment.
So if we are getting closer, how long do you think it will be before the government disclosure of we are not alone? And even more recently, a top intelligence senior military officer, Colonel Carl E. Nell, says, quote, "Zero doubt," end quote, "non-human intelligence has visited Earth."
Anybody paying attention realizes the government has already indicated that unidentified anomalous phenomena are real, they're not ours, and they're not our adversaries. The Pentagon has said that.
Colonel Nell has been honored to command at every grade level through colonel, including activation of the Army's newest Expeditionary Military Intelligence Brigade supporting the 15th Airborne Corps and JSOC. And he says too many people in authority say that we have been visited.
How can the folks in the audience come to the, a common understanding of what this phenomenon is? And so there's sort of two tracks here. One is from first principles, and another is actually from the data. So let's take a look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who is the defense chief for Canada, has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Ham Eshed, the head of Israel's, or former head of Israel's Space Force, has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing. Lou Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially level material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP disclosure amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data. From a first principles standpoint, what's so unusual about this realization? There's billions of stars in the galaxy. Life here evolved in 500 million years, which is basically a blink of an eye. We've found planets around every star that we've looked at. It's likely that the universe is full of life. If you look at the SETI program in particular, the SETI program has all the same assumptions that you would accept and probably make with respect to this topic, except that they believe that non-human intelligence is transmitting signals here. And the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems. So the other guy is probably not going to transmit. But what the other guy may do is come here.
And yet the government itself has not formally disclosed that we are not alone. But why?
So there's 6 basic reasons. And this, again, you could draw this out from first principles. There's a national security reason. There's the lack of a plan. There's the potential for societal disruption. There's the possibility that there's some non-public agreement. There's the potential for misdeeds and the desire to cover up misdeeds. And there's just the basic organizational intransigence and lack of priority that might be associated with the topic. So all these things are factors. The issue is that really the national security issue subsumes all the others. And so there's an opportunity maybe to contract the national security issue similarly to what was done with nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, such that nuclear energy is not necessarily classified and is available to the public. But lack of a plan and the potential for societal disruption are key ingredients that would prevent any responsible leader from coming forward with information that they don't have the means to address in a responsible way. It would be irresponsible to do that. So the first issue is the moral right. The government exists for and by the people. And so the nature of reality is fundamentally not government information. People have a right to know the world in which we live, and the pursuit of happiness requires that knowledge. So that's sort of the first kind of overarching philosophical foundation for this. If there's lack of proper oversight, which is suggested by some of the whistleblowers, that needs to be remediated. So the first issue is the moral issue. The second issue is being in a reactive mode is never preferable to being in a proactive mode. So reactive mode is basically trying to prevent disclosure. But failing that, you might get a situation where you have catastrophic disclosure that creates all the problems that you were trying to prevent. So a more balanced middle path of controlled disclosure is the best way to do this, which is, again, an argument for some amount of disclosure. And the third part is simply societal advance and global competitiveness. More brain trust needs to be brought into this topic in order to make progress and to improve society. And so all 3 of those things together trump the 6 other reasons for non-disclosure.
And join me 2 weeks from today. They are coming. Thanks for joining me from your home or where you work. I'm David Denault, and this has been Special Report on About Space Today.
This has been a special report from About Space Today.